Why do this?
I am an entrepreneur in Magnolia, just right down the road here from the station in Columbia County. And honestly, I started looking around, realizing what a mess our country, especially on the federal level with the federal government, the exponential growth of federal government. It's the largest government in my lifetime that I've ever seen, here on American soil. And you have to remember, government gets that power from somewhere. And in my opinion, it comes obviously from the people. And once we grant power to the federal government, it rarely gives it back. And I just think we're on a perilous course with the growth of government, the power of government, the control of government in the ordinary, average life of every American out there. Every little detail of your day at this point is now governed in some way, directly or indirectly, by the federal government. And I think we need to push back. The second thing is we can't afford it. Even if you love big government, we can't afford it. I mean, we're tipping a $16 trillion national debt now. That should send a chill down every American's spine, because we cannot afford, 42 cents on every dollar. We're borrowing from the Chinese. Even if you loved big government and you thought big government could solve every one of your individual problems, we can't afford it. And we're on, I think, a reckless path toward federal bankruptcy if we don't get our act together and send a strong message to the federal government to cut it out.
Then how can you, going to Congress, can fix that? Because you're just one person. You're from the 4th Congressional District in Arkansas. Why do we think you'll be able to do anything about that?
Right. You're just one of 435.
Yeah,
exactly. And I understand. And that is a frustration in one way. And yet the other part of that puzzle is that, yes, you're one of 434, but of all of the ingredients in government, of all the mechanisms in government, the founders gave Congress the power of the purse. And so that, to me, is a driving force with what drove my decision to actually run for the United States Congress. The financial situation is such a burden on my heart right now, as far as weighing us down as a nation, pulling us down. You can't compete with other nations if you're indebted to them. Sure. How can we compete with China if we are indebted to China? How can we, even Scripture says that the borrower is subject to the lender. I mean, these are time-honored, these are not new ideas. These are time-honored principles, and we're breaking those principles, and we're breaking them in a huge way and at a pace at which I've never seen before. When I ran for Congress in 2010 in the 4th Congressional District, we had just crossed the $10 trillion threshold of debt. We are now, in 2 short years, we have now gone from that threshold to pushing 16. They've already authorized the debt ceiling up to 17. So the Congress, the founders gave Congress the power of the purse. I think it's our congressmen that have got to step up and say, you know what, we're going to put our country before our careers, and we're actually going to do what's best for America. We're going to ratchet this debt down, and that's going to take, I think, political fortitude to accomplish that.
You talked about 2010. You ran in 10, were not successful. What did you learn from that experience, and has it changed how you're doing it this time?
I learned so much from that experience. You know what? As a teacher, I've always told my students, failure is never final. And so long as you're making an effort to be a difference maker, I think that's one of the most important things. And I learned that through that experience. It would have been so easy to look at that and go, oh my goodness, I didn't make it across the finish. I won the Republican primary, didn't win the general, didn't make it across the finish line. Let's give up. Let's quit. You know what? We can't do that in America. That whatever it is that you're called to do, I think to play your part to help get this country on the right track, I think is a very important thing. But the things that I learned, just basic campaign management, how to run a campaign, and more than anything, what I learned was from the people. And I tried to take those conversations that I had in 2010 and grow them this year and talk to even more citizens and talk to even more experts out there that are actually living in the trenches. There's a lot of great ideas out there about how to create what I believe we should have private sector solutions to government and not government-centered solutions. And if you talk to enough people, because this is the people's house that I'm running for, the House of Representatives, the founders, I think, gave it a very endearing nickname. They called it the People's House. It's not supposed to be the Political Action Committee's house or Washington, D.C.'s house or the Beltway Interconnections house. This is the people's house. And when I think our founders meant that, they meant that very seriously. This belongs to the people back home in the district. So the candidates should listen to the people, not necessarily always tell the people what they should think, but quit talking long enough to listen to what people are telling their representative. And I think that's extremely important.
This is another question I ask most candidates that I talk to. You've got a pretty crowded field in the Republican primary. What separates you from the other folks in this race?
I think credentials. I think one of the things that is important to realize is that I have a triangle of credentials for this this particular job. That being private sector. I'm an entrepreneur. I started my own business, Beth Productions, on the downtown square of Magnolia. So I've got that private sector experience of building something from the ground up. I'm also excited to be involved with my family business, Rankin Land and Timber. So I've got entrepreneurial experience on both of those edges, which I think is important to have real world experience. How can you understand the economy if you've never contributed to it? If you've never really gotten out there and tried to build something from the ground up? It's not a walk in the park. I mean, this is trust me, the government is not your friend when you're an entrepreneur out there trying to build a business. Secondly, is that I've worked with Governor Mike Huckabee for 7 years. So I do know my way around Capitol Hill. I was the policy advisor for Governor Huckabee to Capitol Hill, to the congressional delegation, to the White House, and also to the multiple gubernatorial organizations out there. There are about 7 or 8 of them. I served as his liaison to each one of those during my years with Governor Huckabee. And then thirdly, I would just say a lifelong love and depth of experience here in the state of Arkansas. Whether it was my year as Miss Arkansas or my time that I traveled all 75 counties with Governor Huckabee, or through my business, Beth Productions, where I've spoken in churches and leadership seminars and chamber banquets and civic functions. That depth of love for Arkansas, you can't purchase that and you can't read it out of a textbook. That's something that's got to bubble up from deep inside your soul. And I feel like, how can you be a representative of the 4th District unless you have that deep cultivated knowledge and love for the people and the heritage of what they've done and accomplished in the 4th District? I think that's a pretty critical ingredient.
As Christians, most of the things that we face in this country now did not come from bad legislation. It came from activist judges. Rick Santorum was with him in Dallas a few weeks ago. He said that he would consider either defunding or redistricting some of these districts, including the Ninth Circuit. And so he's got a plan to do something like this. Would you be on board as a congressperson in D.C.? Would you be on board with taking a look at either defunding some of these districts or redistricting some of these federal districts?
Well, I think that's certainly something I would look into, studying and taking a look at that. I need to learn a little bit more about that. One thing that I do know, though, is that, even James Madison had quite an issue, even during James Madison's lifetime. I mean, think about how briefly America had existed at that point. Even James Madison had an issue with some of the activist judges during his lifetime. So that's how quickly judges can tend to gravitate toward not just interpreting the law, but trying to make the law. And my point is, if a judge wants to make the law, they should run for Congress, because that's what Congress does. Congress makes the law. So, if you want to have anything more to do with actually shaping and making the law, then don't be a judge, because your job is to interpret the law. And I feel like we are walking a very fine line. And I'm here. That's not just my opinion. I'm hearing that from scores and scores of citizens saying, look, we've got to push back. We've got to be sure that some of these activist judges understand what their role is constitutionally. They are not the supreme branch of government. They are just one branch of government. And we've got to be sure that in our minds, we don't inflate them to where they are actually above the other two branches. And I feel like sometimes that's what we do for fear of litigation, for fear of the cost of what pushing back is going to be to mean, but I feel like that's a message we've got to really focus on, and maybe even recapture our ability to have petitions, citizen-centered petitions, pushing back and also using that course of action as citizens. The Constitution granted us a lot of measures, not just through elections, but through petitions and other forms of communication where we can get our message to government if we'll band together and really organize our ideas.
Would you consider impeachment proceedings against certain federal judges?
Well, that's an interest. No one's ever asked me that question before, but I feel like it would obviously depend on the judge, and it would depend on the case. And
sure,
that impeachment is certainly not something I would ever just throw around. But I mean, obviously, it would just depend on the case.
Yeah, because we have several instances I know that deal with the state of Texas. You got the Ninth Circuit in California, and they're only there because they're only there as long as they have good behavior.
Right.
And I would like to see a definition of good behavior, because in my opinion, we've got several justices that
vague, isn't it?
have not exhibited good behavior. Finally here, let me ask you, what are your top 3 priorities going into office if you should win this thing?
Some of the priorities that I feel like I'm hearing from citizens across the 4th District, and keep in mind how large the district is now. It's 33 counties. Yeah. And so I really am reaching out, pulling in citizens. What are your concerns? What is weighing heavily on your heart right now? What is it the 4th District of Arkansas should be focused on as far as our seat in the United States Congress? And what I'm hearing, number one, is jobs. How do we create jobs? And to me, the best jobs program in America is the free market. I'm the daughter of a free market economist. My father studied Milton Friedman, and he's a big believer in the free enterprise system. That's what works in America. Sure. And so I tell folks it's pretty easy to understand what my jobs plan is, because it's the free market. Legislation that respects the free market, I'm going to support it. Legislation that chokes out the life of the free market, I'm going to be against it. It's pretty simple. Those are simple, time-honored truths we can put back into practice that will drive the economy forward. I'm very concerned that we're trying to become more like Europe here in America. I remind people, take a look across the pond. Europe doesn't even work in Europe. It sure won't work here in America. So I think jobs is one of the most important things. Ratcheting down the national debt and the annual deficits. The president just sent another budget to Congress, and it's reeking of another $1.3 trillion in debt. What is he thinking? We need leadership right now. Leadership. But again, Congress passes the budget. Just because a budget landed in their laps doesn't mean they have to pass it. They've got to step up and be leaders on this issue too. How do you do that? A balanced budget amendment. Ronald Reagan begged for it in the 80s. They tried it again in the 90s. It failed by 1 vote. We've got to have the balanced budget amendment. We do have it in the state of Arkansas. During my 7 years with Governor Huckabee, I watched that process happen. So it can definitely happen. The third thing, I'm going to throw 2 in there if I can cheat a little and put 2 priorities for my number 3, is tax simplification. We've got to simplify. It's 72,000 pages of the IRS code. 72,000 pages. I would venture to say most IRS agents haven't read that puppy in a while. And in addition to that, regulatory reform. I'm hearing from business owners everywhere. They are begging for relief. We're in a desperate situation now where we need to try to keep every job we can in America. Business owners are having a tough time doing that when they've got right down the hall the Chinese officials in another office saying, we'll do anything it takes to get your business and your product in our country. And then you've got the American government bearing down, encroaching on these business owners, penalizing them, fining them, jumping in, finding everything possibly wrong that they can, and really making it very difficult to do business in America. I remind people there's a reason companies aren't lined up to come do business in America. Nobody wants to deal with the regulatory arm of the federal government in the United States of America. And that is a crying shame, because if the government would back off, we would have businesses lined up to come do business in this country, because we have the best workers, we have the most ethical workforce out there, in my opinion. I feel like if Americans are given a shot at this, they'll step up and deliver. We just need a government that's actually going to work with us instead of against us.
Sure. Final question for you. Yes or no answer to this one. I feel like you're playing Jeopardy or something, but yes or no answer here. Has this president, in your opinion, committed impeachable offenses?
I don't know that I would go to impeachable offenses. But I will tell you this. I don't like his policies. I don't believe they represent the best of America, and I'm going to work really, really hard to get in a new president this fall.
How can folks get a hold of you?
Beth Ann Rankin for Congress.com, 901-7000. That's area code 870. We do have a campaign Facebook page that I've actually found is even people enjoy that even more than the website. So that's Beth Ann Rankin for U.S. Congress. And again, the phone number is 870-901-7000. And I do welcome people. We need help, volunteers. We've got our yard signs ready to go, bumper stickers. And this is a grassroots-driven campaign, and I really believe that's how we're going to win this election. And I just want to thank everybody out there for supporting us.
Excellent. Beth Ann Rankin, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.